Hello there, welcome to the channel. I'm Beth and I have quite a project to share with you today. Quite a while back I shared that I had a Smart Doll Pear Cocoa kit to put together, but that I was open to taking commissions if anyone wanted a particular character or an idea made from this Smart Doll kit. One of the lovely supporters on my Patreon, the Custom Doll tier, messaged me and said that she did have an idea in mind and would like to commission it. So she sent me all the details of the vibe that she wanted, the sort of details of the character, and some ideas for the various parts of the outfit and boots, accessories that she'd like to go with her. So once we had all the details sorted out, I was able to get started first of all in assembling the kit, which involved cutting away the excess sofubi and assembling the frame, and then I would be able to put her all together and get started. Now, so far I have actually put together quite a few frames and bodies now, and this was a kit that I received in an utter chaos box. And I did find there were some imperfections in the frame, which unfortunately meant her movements weren't quite as smooth or easy as with a regular Smart Doll. Over emails, we discussed the look for this character, whose name is Aowama. She is an astrophysics grad student, and my patron wanted her to wear a steampunk style outfit. But not too much steampunk, just the right amount. So I put together some references from the internet, some notes on possible wigs to purchase and style, and in turn got back some reference pictures and notes from my customer. She had some really good ideas which I was keen to translate into a Smart Doll size, so I started working on concept art. And again, I'm trying to find a balance between steampunk and casual without it looking too costumey. I sketched up some boots and face-up ideas, and with some feedback, I then made further sketches. I drew up some rough ideas for Aowama's forearm tattoo, which will be somewhat astrophysics based, and you'll see in the end, between the 4 outfits I sketched here, I chose different elements from each one for her final look. I was excited to get started, partly because the clothes that I'll be making are the kind of clothes I like to or would like to wear myself. The trousers I've drawn for her are something like motorbike jeans, so to give me a starting place, I've taken the free Smart Doll pattern for the Tokyo jeans and kind of mashed them together with a leggings pattern to start tapering in and shaping a pair of jeans as a base. It took a few attempts to get the fit just right. I made some prototype pieces which I ended up altering so I could still make use of them. But in the end I had a base pattern that worked. I ended up making adjustments to the width of the legs, making them slightly shorter, and also bringing up the original front of the Tokyo jeans. I then brought together the front and back pattern pieces, removed the seam allowance from the sides, bringing them together and taping them so I could draw the panels that I planned out. I could then cut along the lines I created, retrace each of the panel pieces and add back in seam allowance where needed. Using an overall colour palette of black, grey and brown, I wanted to create a textured or ribbed kind of side panel for the trousers, so I tried a couple of different fabrics and methods for this. I opted for a medium grey colour in cotton and combined this with the rest of the jeans in a black or dark grey chambray cotton. I won't get too much into the assembly. I put the back pieces and front pieces together as normal, assembled the side leg panels. I brought the front and backs together at the sides before inserting the lower leg panels and top stitching them. I added the belt as I usually do, joined the jeans at the front, added some top stitching and reinforcement at the fly opening, joined and stitched the inner leg seam, finished off the leg cuffs nicely and added in my label. And at this point it just needs the rivet fastening at the front done. I'm really pleased with all the detail in these jeans, and I'd like to try them again in some different materials too. Here she has on her long wig which has arrived, which I quickly trimmed and initially styled, though I would come back to do this again with some new hair curlers. A little sketch here of the different pieces I've chosen to make from the concept art. And the next thing I make will be the vest, which again I'm starting with a free Smart Doll sewing pattern and making alterations to. I used the same kind of light breathable jersey you get in gym shirts for my first attempt at this pattern. To get a nice finish on the shoulder straps, I would stitch them in place, then turn them twice over to the inside and hand stitch the join. While I do that, let me say a huge thank you to all of my supporters over on Patreon. Thank you all for your support. I machine top stitched the straps. I brought the sides together and stitched them, and machine finished the lower hem as well. I tried it on and wasn't entirely happy with the fit to go with these jeans in particular. I cut slashes in the front as per my concept art, but I just wasn't happy with how it was looking. I remade the vest slightly shorter in a black jersey, well pre-washed and using a better elastic stitch for the straps and the hem, and it's sitting better on her in my opinion. So I tried a slightly different layout of the decorative slashes, and I really love it this time. Next up, I'm going to pattern the corset I want to make her. I want it to sit nicely over the jeans and vest, so I'm putting cling film and masking tape over the existing outfit, so everything should sit nicely. I do my usual drawing of seam lines. I make marks so that the centre should meet up when I'm putting it back together, and I'll simply remove the masking tape and cut apart the pattern pieces. I can then transfer them onto a lightweight cardboard, and I've got a centre line for the waist as well. And today I'm trying out a new little sewing gadget that I bought for myself. They're these little rings that will help you draw in a seam allowance around an existing pattern piece. So the rings come in different sizes, and you just poke your pencil through and kind of drag them around the outer edge of your pattern. I think it's quite a good little time saver. You just have to sharpen up the corners because it seems to do a little rounding of all the edges. With my new pattern pieces, I transfer them to a medium weight cotton and make a little mock-up to check the fit of everything. For the main body of her corset, I've chosen a dark grey, it's a wool blend fabric, kind of lightweight like a kilt fabric. And I've transferred the pattern pieces onto interfacing so everything stays nice and rigid. The fabric has a slight herringbone texture to it, and I'm looking out buckles and leather straps and extras that I plan to use for decoration. I've put together just the front 4 panels. I'm going to use a narrow brown ribbon to emphasize the seams, and I'm going to lightly glue in these leather straps and buckles before sewing in the rest of the corset, so they'll be attached securely towards the front. I'm also hammering in some tiny brass kind of coloured rivets as well. I love how these look. I've made up a lining layer in white cotton, and I'm just laying them right sides out together for the moment because I plan to bind all the edges with this lightweight strapping fabric that I have pressed to be slightly longer on the inside edge so that I can line it up around the edge and top stitch from the right side of the corset, and I can be sure it will catch the back end on the inside because it is slightly longer. Here I've bound the top and bottom edges of the corset, but just tucked in and hand stitched the back closures because I'm going to attach some eyelet fastenings there to use a ribbon to close up the corset. I do recommend this We Are Memory Keepers gadget for doing eyelets and the like. It is much gentler on the hands than some of the basic tools I've had in the past. And just in case there's any fraying around the eyelets, I add some fray check as well. I'm so pleased with her lovely little corset, isn't it good? Now next up I'm patterning the cropped jacket that I had in my concept art. It's going to overlap at the front, so I'm just patterning one half and having it extend past the centre in the front. I've used the usual masking tape method, so I'm transferring it onto card and just checking it still sits kind of right before I add on my seam allowance. And I'm going to make the mock-up using a medium weight cotton. I really like how the mock-up came out actually. I think it sits really nicely on her, and there was some talk about having it in this colour, but we didn't go that way. I tried out a few different buckles potentially for the front fastening. I think I'll go with these ones and some leather straps. And next I picked out some grey jersey fabric and white for the lining to make the next version of it. Ultimately I didn't go with this fabric. I did use the bagging out method for the lining though. So I lined up the outer and lining pieces with the sleeves and the collar attached. I stitch along the cuff seams, right sides in, and leaving a little gap at either end, I pin and will sew all the way along the lower side to front seam, up the centre closure, around the collar, down the other centre closure, and along the lower seam, leaving the back seam completely open for now. Here that's all stitched, and before I turn anything out, I snip any external corners. With a firmer fabric, you can cut into the seam allowance for any really curvy parts. From the opening in the back that we left, I'm reaching up and grabbing the collar, and I'm pulling it through, but not all the way. We're not turning the whole thing inside out. We're actually folding the sleeve against itself, the cuff of the sleeve, and exposing the two sets of open side seams. I'm then lining the side seams up against each other, right sides together, from the edge of each sleeve cuff, if you like, towards the bottom hem. I'm going to pin them and hand stitch a running stitch temporarily before I take it to the machine. Hopefully that's a little clearer now the pins are out of the way. So the lining is up against the lining and the outer against the outer. You can stick your finger all the way through. It's kind of bizarre geometry here, but we're going to stitch along this seam and repeat for the other side. Here's what that looks like now it's done. You can remove the temporary stitches, and now through the hole in the bottom hem, we can turn the whole thing inside out. It's a little tricky because I'm working with jersey here, but you're just going to press out all your seams along the outer edges and around your sleeve cuffs. Then we're going to want to tuck in, pin and stitch however you prefer, that last open part along the back lower hem. The bagging out worked great, and I was at the point where I was ready to do a final top stitch, but even though I liked the colour, the material just wasn't it. It was kind of stretched out and I didn't like it, so it went in the bin. I went and had another rummage in my fabric hoard and came out with this fabric, which is actually the same as I used for the prototype, but I had hand dyed it a few years ago now a lovely kind of mid-grey colour. So coupled with a light grey cotton for the lining, I went ahead and repeated all of those stages again. Hopefully this footage of me bagging out the lining for the jacket again will be nice and clear for anyone who's still struggling with it. I know a lot of people ask about this method. Again, I think it's when it comes to turning it sort of inside out to line up those side seams. I think that's where a lot of people get lost. So hopefully it's nice and clear here where we're taking the join from the lining fabric to the outer fabric, matching up those seams and then joining the lining and the outer fabrics together. I'm flipping it right side out again, and I'm just using a pair of tweezers, something rounded, to help push out all of the corners and seams and finger roll the cuffs of the sleeves before giving it a good press and tucking in the open part at the back. And finally I'll give all the outer edges a nice top stitch, including the cuffs, before I start to attach buckles. I've chosen a nice faux leather that works with the colours and paired it with the buckles, cutting strips and just trimming them to size. Fabric gluing them in place before going back in with little metal rivets that I hammer into place, so everything's nice and secure. And I wanted the design to be nicely balanced so that even if the jacket is being worn open, the long straps on the jacket's right side are kind of anchored into place. So I've added these extra bits for the straps to tuck into. I think it's quite a nice touch, and then they are hidden when the jacket is worn closed and all buckled up. I've also added some extra detail here with the same type of D-rings as I'm going to have on the jeans, and little rivets to hold them in place as well. Hello! I'm looking at making the hip pouch next, which will have a strap going around the leg. I've already put in 2 D-rings to her jeans that I plan to attach this to. Done a couple of sketches here of the straps attaching to those D-rings, some probably back panel, perhaps riveting the various straps. This will go onto the leg, like go around, have perhaps a buckle so it's adjustable, and then how I want to make like a nice pouch for her from the side, kind of like this. And I quite fancy trying to wet mould the shape of the pouch so it's kind of formed before it gets stitched down. So I've taken some measurements. I think roughly these measurements for the main body of the pouch, the main outside in centimetres 4x6, the sort of the pouch part about 3x4, and the flap about 2x3. I am going to try using foam board and mount board to construct like a wet forming thing for this. So I've got kind of a base piece, and I've cut out 2 layers of foam board in the size that I want the pouch to be. So I'm actually going to wrap them in sellotape to make them a little moisture resistant, and I'm going to glue them down, so that's going to become one solid part. I'm going to dampen the leather and press it over this shape, and to have it hold in that shape I've cut 2 layers of mount board, which is nice and really rigid. I'm going to stick 2 layers together to make them nice and strong, and they are 5mm, overall 5mm larger than the foam board pieces, so they should allow for a little wiggle room for the actual width, the thickness of the leather, so that should still fit over when the leather is in place. So I'm going to glue all this together, dampen some leather, and we'll go try this out, see if it works. And that's just what I did. I covered various parts in sellotape, make it more durable so I can use it again. Used a little spray bottle of water to dampen the leather, let that soak in. Gently kind of finger pressed it over the mould, and then grabbed some bulldog clips and whatever I could find that was about the right size, and kind of pinch those edges together so I could then sit it aside, let it dry completely before peeling it off of the mould. It occurred to me I could add a little rectangle of leather for the flap, so I stuck that in while it was all still damp as well. It came out really nicely, a nice clean kind of shape to it, and I went ahead with this version and added some details, a magnet fastening, and I glued the upper parts to a backing piece before using a punch to create holes for hand stitching, so everything was nice and secure. I did, however, decide this was not the version I would continue with. The leather was okay, but not really the right thickness to hold its shape. I found that the hand stitching buckled the edges just way too much. So I went ahead and made a second version, again, with a slightly thicker leather. I used a scalpel and ruler to trim away the excess around the edges, leaving enough space for me to glue it down and then come back and hand stitch. I made a proper template this time for the back piece, including straps for the D-rings to go around. And again, I made sure it was well glued into place before I hand stitched it for reinforcement, and added metal rivets as well. I applied burnishing gum to the outside edges and used this wooden rotary tool attachment to polish them up. And there were just the straps to make and attach. So, out with version 1 and in with version 2. Looking much, much better. I've added magnets inside the pouch for the flap to close nicely with, and everything's got rivets and buckles, various holes for adjustment, and this will fit round the thigh nicely. Now the weather had been affy dreich, but it soon dried up and I was able to run out to the shed and apply MSC to prep the face and the arm for face up and tattoo. A few more tattoo mock-ups here, you'll soon see which one I went with, and I'll be essentially just using watercolour pencils, apart from a little blush for the face. Using my earlier concept art, I started sketching in the outlines for her eye makeup with a few bold lashes. I used grey to highlight the edges in some areas and colour her lids. I outlined the brows first in grey before coming back to fill them in with individual strokes. We were looking for a kind of heavier brow, but not too fierce or anything, a kind of gentle look. I built up the face up over a few different layers and eventually added colour to the lips. She wanted quite dark lipstick though. I would end up coming back in and mixing pencils together to get a darker lip. I added some blush as well behind the ears and on the face. And I started sketching out her arm tattoo as well. Starting from the centre, placed to be nice and visible when the doll is posed just standing naturally. And I worked my way out from the centre, building up layers again over several different MSC applications. If you're struggling to get clean, bold lines with watercolour pencil, it is possible to use a little water and a brush, and in a palette you can apply the water directly to the tip of the pencil, and you can use this method to blend different colours together as well. I used this to add a little deeper colour to the eyeliner, the eyelashes, and again to the lips as well. The tattoo looks quite shiny until it's been hit with the MSC sealant layer. And here's the face progress so far. I finally got the lips as dark as they needed to be. There's still some warmth in there, but they are much darker now. And in case you're wondering about the big, chunky, funky looking boots in the concept art, I'm afraid that's the part of the project that isn't ready just yet. You'll have to wait until the next video to see how we make them. But we do have an initial, really rough and only FDM printed test version of the boot sole ready so far. Finally, for today anyway, I just have the eyes to make and a slight restyling of the wig to do, plus a couple small accessories, but they're just a surprise for my customer. I use a custom silicone mold that I made to cast with UV clear resin a couple of pairs of eyeball bases. I make them clear initially and then colour them with 2 or 3 layers of white acrylic paint. And then I'm able to cut out and glue on to the flat area some irises that I designed on Procreate and printed out onto photo paper. They are then finished off with some more layers of clear UV resin and slightly domed in the centre. And that just about takes us up to where I am at the moment. I'll put all of her clothing pieces back on her all together and we'll have a look at some studio shots of her. But trust me when I say the boots I make her are going to be amazing. I cannot wait. I have high hopes. I've put so much work into adding so many details to the pieces that she has so far. I really think the boots are going to be the crowning glory to this whole commission. I think it's going to be fantastic. So I really hope you enjoyed watching what I've made so far for Aowama and for my lovely patron who has commissioned her. And I hope you will be as excited as I am to see the next video in her progress and to see how I put together these boots. If everything goes to plan, we might be in a position to sell the printed soles, lasts and patterns altogether. So if you're interested, look out for updates over on my Patreon. They'll always be the first to know about these kind of things in development. And until then, please leave a like on the video if you've enjoyed this, and I would love to know what you thought of Aowama's progress so far. Do you have a favourite piece, clothing, her face up? Do you like her tattoo? I would love to know what you think, so drop a comment down below. So until next time, be good, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!